So who here has a drill machine or uses it on a, no? Okay, couple in the back, yes. Our fire pass people, of course. So drill machine is an app that you can use while you're driving around, looking for houses, see an ugly house, a vacant house, a boarded up house. You just pop it in onto the app and you can have postcards automatically mailed on your sequence. So every few weeks or whatever. When the slide comes up, there will be, there should be a code to sign up, and then you get like 15 free credits, and you can start using that. Hi.
Tonight's sponsor.
I lied. Tonight's sponsor is PropStream, and sorry about that. Well, Dylan Machine got a little extra stuff there. Well, anyway, who uses PropStream? I do not. Who wants to tell me? Can you tell me a little bit about PropStream? Why do you like it so much?
Absolutely. What I like about PropStream is the filters, right? You got a bunch of options that you can pretty much, someone was asking about the equity of the property. PropStream gives you that, I think it was you, right? Yeah, it gives you the equity, no, the one behind you. Yeah, so the equity of the property, all the history, it's pretty, I mean, it's not perfect, right? But it definitely gives us like a lot of insight for you know, about a property, about the owner, and definitely opens up a conversation with the person, with the seller. Right?
Cool. Yeah, thank you, because I have not used it personally. I've seen the logo and stuff like that, but I have not used it, so thank you, Al. What's it called again? PropStream. All right, well, thank you all for coming. Hello, ladies. Hi, Lily. Sorry, we were emailing earlier. So, anyway, I want to welcome, well, not yet, because I'm going to give you a proper introduction. So, just a little bit about Bree. She is a very smart cookie. She's like, we just went to a property in 29 Palms, and I feel like I asked her a million questions, and it was just like, it was a good conversation, you know, our conversations, and Christy knows we've talked to wee hours in the morning as well. So it was a great conversation. I'm very thankful for your services, because instead of, you know, buying a property and getting into something that's way over my head, she helped me analyze it, and so I'm thankful for that. Thank you so much. And I know some of you have also been working with her. So without further ado, Ms. Breanna Williams. Thank you, everyone. Okay.
Couple. Like I say, I think I say this every time, but we'll see how well I do with this technology. So, hello, everyone. I'm Breanna Williams. I am an interior designer. Closer? Yes. Better? Yes. Okay. Let's see. There we go. That is the plan. So I'm an interior designer. I'm also a wife. I'm also a mom. I have 4 kids, as you can see. I have Jace, he's 2. Charlotte is 3. Mackenzie is 6. And Avery is 11. She just graduated 5th grade today. Wow. You know how that's a lot. There's a lot of feels there. So I started interior design. Did I mess that up? I did not. I started interior design back in 2010. I went to school for it. I have a degree in interior design, and shortly after school, I went into retail. There's so many different jobs that you can have in interior design that are just too many to name. But I actually found myself in retail. I managed a an interior design department within a retail furniture showroom, and I did that for about 8.5 years. So I worked all over Southern California, from Yorba Linda to San Bernardino, the mountains, Redlands, 29 Palms, you name it. I've kind of been all over the place. So during that time, I worked for Lazy Boy. So during my time with Lazy Boy, I got to do a lot of different things. I got to teach other designers how to design, and overall, my experience, I was able to design over 3,000 spaces within the 8.5 years that I did work there. So I also was able to hit over $1 million in sales and lots of other really fun things, and it gave me a lot of experience. So I took that experience, and when my third child was born, Charlotte, she was born on Labor Day weekend. So if you've worked retail before, you know it's like a blackout weekend. You cannot request time off. So my birthday's on Labor Day weekend, and I sacrificed my birthday a long time ago to retail. But I kind of knew I wasn't going to sacrifice her birthday to retail, and that's when I left my W-2 and I started my own job. So I did that in 2020, right at the height of the pandemic, and right around that time, I think as you guys are pretty much all aware, that was when short-term rentals really became popular. So as I started my endeavor in my own interior design business, working in residences all over Southern California, I also wanted to get into a little bit of investing myself. So I started educating myself on short-term rentals, fix and flips, pretty much all of the things that come with real estate investing, and that was about the time that I got plugged into the club. So I got to meet lots of people like you guys, a lot of other investors, short-term rentals, and eventually midterm rentals. So that's kind of where I fall today. So in the past, I've worked with, like I said, I've worked with short-term rentals, fix and flip, and then midterm rentals. I find probably the most joy with working with midterm rentals, just because it's a little bit more of creating a home as opposed to a vacation. And I think those two things are just a little bit different. So while I can design a vacation for somebody, I prefer to design a home for somebody. And midterm rentals essentially are temporary homes for people, regardless of what the avatar is that we're looking at working with or working for. So, did I get everything on there? Make sure I didn't forget anything.
Virtual design.
Oh yes, sure. So as I started kind of working with more investors, and I found more what brings me joy, I started to cater my services particularly to investors. So from virtual design to full service design, going in, staging the property, procuring all of the things that are necessary to stage the property, etc. And also travel design. So for those that have properties outside of Southern California, obviously that's something that we can do. We can travel out and help them on their properties in Texas or Ohio or Tennessee or wherever they may be. And then inevitably the property audit. And the property audit is kind of like the quick little bit. You get a couple of hours with me. Before you have a couple of hours with me, I dive deep on the property. I dive deep on the market, the property itself, who's staying there, who should be staying there, who's not staying there, how do we get in front of those people, how much are they willing to pay, what kind of amenities do they need, what are some issues that they have when they book, when they stay, what are common complaints that they may have, and how do we get way ahead of those and use the design to totally prevent all of those pain points from even occurring. And that's what my property audit does. So for today, we're going to talk about specifically midterm rentals, common guest avatars that you're going to see with midterm rentals, and then how do we design for those guest avatars to avoid certain pain points that they may have. How do we even figure out what their pain points are going to be before they have them? And how do I know that if I've never rented out to this particular avatar before? So I'll kind of show you a little bit of the way that I go into researching. There are so many ways to analyze properties and markets and even guest avatars. There's so many ways to do things. This is what I have found works the best for me, and I feel like it does help a lot of people. So hopefully you guys get something out of it today. So if you're not familiar with midterm rentals are in between a short-term rental and a long-term rental. So they're generally 30 days or more. There are times where you can have somebody staying in an MTR for 6 months or 9 months or longer. It just really depends. The average stay is going to be about 90 days. So many, I should say, one of the most common avatars that you're going to find in a midterm rental is going to be, hi Tammy, is going to be a traveling nurse, or maybe that or corporate housing are probably the two that you hear about the most, or digital nomads are now becoming more popular. So you're going to hear about them the most. And those are the people that typically tend to stay in one place for about 2 to 3 months. If it's a travel nurse, their contracts are usually 13 weeks, so they're going to be there for 3 months. So with that being said, yes, there are guests that will stay for 30 days, and there are guests that will stay for 6 months or more, but the average is going to be about 90 days. So with midterm rentals, your income potential is going to be a little bit better than a long-term rental. You can certainly charge more. You are also paying more because you do have to furnish the unit. You do have to provide utilities. You do have to provide high-speed Wi-Fi, and if you want to, you can provide cable. I don't think that's really as necessary anymore, but there are some amenities that you'll want to provide similar to a short-term rental. Now, because people are staying 30 days at a time or more, you're not charging a nightly rate. You're not generally charging as much as you would with a short-term rental. However, in markets where, not all markets, but in some markets where short-term rentals can charge higher, mid-term rentals can also charge higher, especially if they're around certain amenities or there's a certain experience that you're able to provide to them, similar to how you would with a short-term rental. So one of the kind of cool things about mid-term rental is that you do have what's called a hybrid strategy. So some investors, if their property does not have restrictions for short-term rentals, during peak season, they will run it as a short-term rental to maximize the revenue there. And then during downturn or down season, they're going to run it as a mid-term rental. If you're looking at a property and you want to run it that way, the property has to make sense for the property. Meaning you have to have short-term rental avatar and a mid-term rental avatar. And you have to know how to shift your property and your marketing. It could be photography, it could be verbiage in your listing, certain keywords, that kind of thing. You have to know how to shift that when you're ready to shift into marketing to the MTR avatar versus the STR avatar. So that's something to consider if you are looking at hybrid. But if your property does allow it, it's a really great way to make a little bit of extra money during those peak seasons. So like for instance, if you're in a beach town, because we have those here, if you're in a beach town, summer's gonna be great for short-term rentals. Maybe not as much mid-term rental. Sometimes you might be near a college, so you're gonna have mid-term rental all year long while they're in school, but when school's out for the summer, you might be sitting vacant. So that's a great opportunity if your market allows to run it as a short-term rental. And again, you're filling vacancy. You can run it the opposite way as well. If you have a property in Joshua Tree and or 29 Palms, as Sarah said, we were just there last week.
Right?
Yeah. Too
I think
much.
that's what deal is.
Yeah, I don't know anymore. Good asking. So if you're in an area like that, where short-term rentals are very popular, but the summer is actually down season, you can actually rent out midterm just so that you're not sitting vacant for 2 to 3 months out of the year. When it's really, really hot, you can go midterm. They're not necessarily looking to go out and do all of the things and see attractions and hike. They're not going to go to Joshua Tree Park and hike. They're coming because they're working and they just want someplace kind of interesting to work. So if your property really screams Joshua Tree or 29 Palms or desert, then that might be an attraction to those people, and they may just find themselves in that area during the summer. So that's something to think about, is just going with a longer term. Instead of chopping your nightly rates in half, which is what we're seeing right now in those markets, a property that would rent for $200 a night, because it's a slower season, it's rented for $100 a night. That's like the average if you kind of, look through Airbnb right now. So instead of doing that, work out whatever it is that you need to meet for your month, and then just shift over to 30-day stays for the next 2 or 3 months and market it that way. And then you have your monthly rate. So that's what the hybrid strategy is. So generally speaking, with a midterm rental, you're going to have less turnover. More often than not, they do maintain the property better for you than a typical short-term rental would. In fact, it's more common for them to decorate for the holidays. They'll, buy a Christmas tree. They'll go out and buy Christmas ornaments and, can I put up Christmas lights? That kind of thing, because they really take pride in the actual property. That's where they're living for 1, 2, 3 months. So it is common that you'll find them take care of the property a little bit better than your short-term rental people, and even your long-term rentals, because you have long-term rental and you don't see them for a year. They check out at the end of the year, the lease ends at the end of the year, and you come in and you're like, oh my gosh, they didn't clean the shower once. The shower's ruined. Well, with midterm rentals, it would be awful. I get that. It's supposed to be an awful situation, but with midterm rentals, you're getting in there every 2 to 3 months. You can provide that deep clean Or for me, if my guest stays over 30 days, I actually offer them a mid-stay clean. More often than not, they're paying, a monthly fee and then their cleaning fee. So it doesn't hurt me to, throw in a normal clean is about half the price of my deep clean, so it doesn't hurt me to throw that in halfway through their stay, and then I don't have to have such a deep clean at the end of their stay. So for me, I prefer to give them, a mid-stay clean as well, and that just kind of helps keep the property maintained. But overall, you're going to find that your property is probably a little bit more well-maintained, than your LTRs and short-term rentals. There are certain things with a mid-term rental also that you have to consider as far as we talked about utilities and internet and all those things. You do also have to provide like landscaping services, or if you're in an area where it snows, you'll want to provide snow removal and things like that. And sometimes in long-term leases, you generally don't have to provide that. So the lease terms on a mid-term rental are going to be a bit more flexible, but there is in fact a lease, whereas in a short-term rental there is not. So definitely differences there. Now, as far as listing for mid-term rentals, you can list them pretty much anywhere you can list a short-term rental. They're just booking for a longer period of time. So you can leverage some of these OTAs, like Airbnb. Tons of people go to Airbnb when they're looking to rent houses, regardless of how long they're looking to rent it. Even like celebrities will go to Airbnb because they want to see what's there. Even now, Airbnb has celebrity homes that are listed. You'll never know whose they are, but that is part of their like luxury homes, and they have a couple of new terminology that they use for some of those higher end homes that are celebrity homes, or if celebrities are looking for places, they're going to go to Airbnb and they can stay within this like layer. There's added privacy and things like that. So they're actually looking for longer term stays as well. So Airbnb is one of my favorite places to post mid-term rentals. Furnished Finder is probably my second favorite place to post mid-term rentals. It works better for some avatars than others, and at the moment, what's more popular on Furnished Finder is going to be a little bit of the lower end monthly rates and design, if you will. There's not a lot of standout on Furnished Finder, and if there is, people aren't used to seeing $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month. They're used to seeing $1,200 a month or $1,500 a month. I think at the moment, when you go in and you put in a housing request on Furnished Finder, at the moment, when it asks your budget, the max that you can say is $3,200 plus. So you can't even say, hey, I have a budget of $5,000 a month. Let me put that out there. They're not going to tell you that. So you have to be kind of clever with how you market it, and you have to know who you're looking for, essentially, to see if their housing request fits the bill, if their profile fits the bill, that kind of thing. More people on Airbnb will also, as guests, fill out their guest profile, so you can learn a little bit about them. On Furnished Finder, I would say 60% of what I see come through on Furnished Finder, the guests don't fill out their guest profile, so you don't really know much about them. It's more important to engage in conversation with them to figure out who's staying at your property, and if ultimately there's somebody that you want staying at your property. So when I'm looking into property and I'm doing what I call the market analysis, really figuring out what that house is, or who that house is good for, I call it following the deal. So you can always say, I want to be in this market because of X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to go find a house in this market because that's where I want to be. But you can also come to Exchangers on Thursday, and there's properties in front of you, left and right. And you have things that are right in front of your face. Sarah and I just talked about this. It's right in front of you. Use what you have in front of you and follow the deal. So find the property, it's on Exchangers, look it up, and figure out who you can put in that house. And then design it for that person, market it to that person, and then fill the house, is essentially what I'm saying. So the very first thing that you want to do is check out regulations. Are there short-term rental restrictions in the HOA, the city, the county? Unfortunately, in Southern California, yes, 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 in most of our areas, especially right now. So that's number one. Let's figure out if we can even run short-term rentals. Can this run as a hybrid home is essentially what I'm saying. If it cannot, then we're going to look strictly at medium-term guest avatars. Strictly people who are going to be renting for 30 days or more. depending on how much money you need, what your monthly rate is, that might also gear you towards the right avatar that's going to stay in the home. I like to look at the demand of the market using a couple of different websites. Generally, OTAs is what I'm using to kind of run my market analysis. Pricing, I'm looking at pricing within the home market, and I look at it in 3 different ways. I'm looking at it, yes.
What is an OTA?
So OTAs are booking sites that host your site, and they also market to guests. So instead of a direct booking website where you're going to book, you're looking for housing, you're going to book directly with me. That would be on my direct booking website that I own. And the OTAs are essentially any website that's hosting your property for you. They're charging you a fee because likely they're marketing and they're running a few things on the back end, and managing your calendar and those kinds of things. And then you have property management software, POS websites that are going to maybe integrate multiple calendars all at once. So if you are posting on multiple different platforms, so Airbnb and VRBO and Booking.com, Zillow, etc., then they can pull your calendars. Not that Zillow has one, but Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, they can pull those calendars, they can combine them into one. They can get messages or inquiries from Airbnb and Booking.com, Verbo, then they'll actually give you the message through the app or through the website. So you're looking at all of those messages in one place and then responding from there. And if I book it on Airbnb, suddenly that week is booked or that month is booked across all those platforms. That's PMS, and then the OTA is the actual website that's hosting the listing for you.
It is Verbo is one of Verbo is OTA?
Yes, OTAs. Mm-hmm. Yes.
For locations, why would you care about warehouses? Is that because of demand?
So we'll get to that. That's in part, it kind of goes to speak towards like the specific avatars that may be working. So the more commerce and the more jobs that are in the area, the more likely you have temporary location. It could be a relocation. It could be people that are working within the company that maybe have to travel for work. Like they live 2-3 hours away and they don't want to commute, so they rent something for the week while they're working, etc. So it speaks to the guest avatar. So when I'm looking at demand and pricing, I'm looking at whole home, I'm looking at by the room, and I'm looking at by the bed. So I'm kind of looking at all of these things, all of these things concurrently. But I want to see where there's more demand. Is there more demand for by the bed? Is there more demand by the room, by the whole home, etc.? For instance, if the property is near an airport, one of the first things I'm going to look at is the airport. Which airlines are there? Do they have hubs in that airport? Do they have flight attendants that are living in the area temporarily because they're flying in and out? And they'll have stints of maybe like 6 months to a year where they're stationed at a specific airport, and yet they may live in Dallas, but they're stationed out of John Wayne in Santa Ana, so they need someplace to stay. So for them, that is an avatar. I kind of just call it crash pads. That's not the avatar, that's the name for the actual property itself, of what kind of property it would be running. But a crash pad is essentially rented by the bed to flight attendants and pilots, and that's just something that they've done for decades. So yes.
What kind of regulations do you see for like midterm rentals?
None so far. So typically anything over 30 days just falls into the category of long-term rentals. And that's where we would require a lease. So if they're staying over 30 days, they're considered tenants. So they have tenants' rights. So you have to ensure that they're signing a lease, if they're not having issues with people just kind of squatting in the apartment or condo or house for 3 months, and then you go to move on to the next tenant, and you're having an issue with them getting out or what have you. So you do have to make sure that you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's and not relying on your booking websites to do it for you. You want to maybe book them through Airbnb, but then also follow that up with a lease. Make sure that they have renters protection as well in the event that anything goes wrong. And personally, I would prefer to keep my money and not give it to Airbnb and book them direct. But right now, Airbnb is a good source of marketing for these types of furnished properties.
What property management software do you have? You mentioned that one property software where you get a message from all of this.
Yeah, there's so many different ones that are out there. Which types of property management software I use. So I currently only have one property that I manage right now. So I design more than I manage. I cherry pick if I want to manage something. And if I work well with the owner, or if I feel like, essentially I had more control over how we were able to furnish the property, and I know that it's going to do really well, and they're trusting me a little bit more, then I know that I'll be able to be a little bit more successful in terms of booking the place for them. It just depends. And to finish that answer, I don't currently use a project management software with midterm rentals. You don't have a lot of turnover. I'm booked out through August right now. It's been that way for a month, so I don't have a lot of people actively messaging me or inquiring to rent because I don't have anything available until mid-August anyway. So I'm, 2.5 months away from that, so I don't have a lot of messages coming in. That's the only reason why I haven't gone with the PMS yet, but they do make it easier to automate. So if you want to make sure that you're responding to people as they inquire to book, or if they have questions, your guests have questions and things of that nature, and you do have multiple properties that you're running, so you have multiple messages flying at you, it's great to be able to automate, to kind of sift through those and then send it from there. And you can also have like the Minute software where you can kind of plug it into the walls, and it monitors the noise levels, and it'll alert you if noise levels are exceeding. You can actually have that automated within your PMS so that if Minute alerts you, it's actually alerting your PMS, and then AI responds and sends a message to your guest and says, excuse me, we understand that you're being a little bit too loud. If you don't mind, would you please? You need to calm down.
It seems more like something you put in an STR.
Definitely more important for STRs. Even if you have one for an STR, I think it's totally worth it. For midterm rentals, like I mentioned, I have one property right now. It's totally manageable. So I would say 2 if you want to automate. Like if you have a full-time job and this is a side thing and you have 2 properties, that's already, now you have to think about how to market and all of these things. So if you can automate those things, that would make your life a lot easier. I would say it's worth it to invest in. If you have 3 properties or more, regardless of whether you're working a day job or not, I would definitely invest in a PMS because it really does make your life so much more simple. And especially if you're looking to scale and gain multiple properties, that's when I would say even for midterm rental, it's going to be beneficial. The caveat is no PMS software caters specifically to midterm rentals yet. So if anybody knows anybody in tech that wants to get somebody, get something put together, let's talk about it. Because if they could analyze markets specifically for these types of avatars that we're talking about today, and then they could run and manage them and automate all of that, and specifically for 30-day plus stays, and they could coordinate your leases, and your contracts are all in one place, and they're taking payment every month. I mean, that would be easier than, that would make things a lot easier.
Can you suggest what the name of the software for STR?
Oh yeah, if you have a short-term rental, even if you have one property, I would do it.
What is the name of the software?
Oh, there's so many out there. There's a new one that I was just listening to a podcast about today called Journey, J-U-R-N-Y. Hospitable is one that I personally have looked into, and I really like what they offer. So if you're looking at getting a short-term rental, I highly recommend jumping into any kind of Facebook group for short-term rental investors, and you will find tons of resources there, and you're going to find people's actual opinions, what matters, what their experience were like with any of the property management software. So just search it, and then years worth of posts is going to pop up, and you're going to learn a lot just from that.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
How do you determine the demand on the MTR?
So I'm going to show you that in just a second. And then the last thing that I'm looking at when I'm looking at market analysis is the location or the amenities that are available. So like I said, is it by an airport? Is it by a business center or a warehouse where we know that there's jobs, where people may be relocating, etc. For instance, I just did a property audit with someone whose home is in Texas, and they're by SpaceX, NASA. They have a military base. These are all places where I know from personal experience. I have a family member that works for SpaceX and recently was just sent over there, and they built their own house. They bought land, they had to rent something for like a year and a half while they were building. So those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. So for that market, I would say without a doubt, relocating families is where it's at. That particular property was in a cul-de-sac directly across the street from one of the most notable elementary schools in that general vicinity. So it made sense that we targeted families with younger children who would be attending that school because that's a marketing opportunity. If you're relocating and you need to stay here while you learn the area, find your house, build your house, then you can stay in our home and you're gonna have access to this elementary school. Or hey, maybe you're coming for the elementary school. If you wanna test this neighborhood out for a month, 2 months, or even a year, we can offer that to you, essentially is what we were talking about. Now shopping centers is another one, tourist attractions, hospitals. Hospitals are obviously traveling medical professionals, whether they be nurses, anesthesiologists, you name it, ER doctors, all of it. They travel for work. And like if you have a level 1 trauma center, you know for sure you're gonna have a ton of nurses, doctors, all of it, coming in and out of there pretty much all year long. So that's a great market or a great avatar for that particular property. Especially if it's within like 2 miles, 2 to 3 miles. That's kind of key. So when I'm doing market analysis, the 3 main websites that I use, I do like to use a little bit of AirDNA, but their analytics are specifically for short-term rentals. So I kind of take it with a grain of salt. I can at least see a little bit more of what's out there in terms of the number of properties that are out there. My very, very first stop though, pull up my phone, and I go to furnishedfinder.com/stats, STATS. And let me see if I can, this one over here, that first one, and this one over here, that first one, what you're looking at, I know it's kind of tiny, and that's just because I really wanted to show you guys all of them that I used. What you're looking at is you put your city and state in, and you can set a mile radius. It could be 10 miles, 20 miles, however far you want to go out. And in this particular instance, I used a property in Eastvale. I had an investor here at the club let me know that they had a home in Eastvale, and they'll be moving out of state, but they want to maintain the property or keep the property, and they wanted to rent it out. So they were just kind of looking into what works best. Long-term, mid-term, short-term, what's my option? So the first thing I did was I went to furnishedfinder.com/stats, and in the last year, there were 82,129 searches within 10 miles of Eastvale for furnished rentals. There was 431,070 page views, page or listing views. So that tells me there's a lot of demand in the area. Now if you look further below, right in here, these things tell us like how many homes there are. So there's like about 900 homes. And what I'm talking about is like where the pink is right there. There's about 900 homes listed on Furnish Finder in that area. Over 500 of them were by the room. So that's where I say when I'm looking, is it by the bed? Is it by the room? Is it whole home? Most of them are by the room. As I dug in a little bit further, homes in Eastvale tend to be a bit larger. Also, not necessarily a place where very many large families are going to be coming to stay temporarily, unless of course they're relocating or something along those lines. So it's more common to see places by the room. In this instance, when they were private spaces, they were probably like an ADU in the backyard or a mother-in-law suite that has its own private entrance, and it was still attached to the house. So still a house that was being occupied by its owner, and then a smaller portion that was getting rented out monthly on the side, essentially. So that was more or less what I had found with that particular property. I also went into Furnish Finder's website, just as if I was going to go in and look for a housing request or put in a housing request myself and say, I want to stay in Eastvale. I searched Eastvale. I like to do it with and without filters. So I will filter it to match my exact property. This property is 6 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms. So I'm going to put in 6 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms and see what pops up. I do the same thing on Airbnb, because generally speaking, I feel like the people that go to Furnish Finder can be different than the people that are going to Airbnb. It's just 2 different avatars essentially that are going to the 2 different websites. Not a lot of people know what Furnish Finder is. It was originally created specifically for travel nursing, so pretty much every travel nurse or travel medical professional out there knows what Furnish Finder is. And if you know a travel medical professional, you might know what it is. If you're an investor, you might know what it is, but I mean, other than that, just your average Jane or John on the street is probably not going to know to look for Furnished Finder unless, of course, they do a Google search and it pops up. That might lead them there. More often than not, I feel like people are generally going to Airbnb when they're looking for furnished rentals. So I searched both. Like I said, I search it without, and then I search it with filters, just to determine what the demand is in my area, and then also what's already there. I will click into the actual listings for this particular property. When I was looking for a whole home, there was when I scrolled down to about a 1 mile radius, there really was only like 2 houses that rented out full home. And they were kind of anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 a month. So again, then I dig a little bit deeper and say, well, who's going to spend $10,000 a month to stay in a nearly 6,000 square foot home? For essentially we want to fill all the months of the year. And unfortunately, it just didn't have that demand. It was more likely that we were going to go by the room or by the bed. So my second option was to look specifically by the room. So then I searched Zillow. I said, well, what does it run for if it's unfurnished for the month? Just a standard 1-year lease. And then, are there any furnished rentals there? Not very much, same situation. And sometimes you'll find a room or an ADU or something like that on Zillow too. Not as often, but sometimes you will. So I like to cover it as an extra step or an extra base, if you will. So that once I brought it down into room, I changed my filters out of those websites, looked for by the room, and looked at pricing there. Who stays in a property by the room? So if you were here in April, Farrah talked about how she house hacks, I think it's her San Bernardino house. Mm-hmm. So she house hacks, and she has long-term tenants that are staying there. And they're essentially just renting by the room in her home, but they bring their own furnishings. She cleans the main living spaces, they clean everything else themselves. So that's kind of what I was looking at. And again, who's doing that? So students will do that. Are we close to any schools? Nurses will do that. They're probably the most common. I think I mentioned crash pads with flight attendants and pilots. They will rent by the bed, and then that funnel goes a little deeper in terms of, is it a hot bed? Is it a warm bed? A hot bed or a cold bed, and they'll pay more. I know. There's a lot. It just keeps going down. So hot beds and cold beds essentially just determine if I'm paying for the bed for the month, you pay a monthly fee, and this bed is yours. If I fly out tomorrow and I'm not coming back until Sunday, that bed, nobody gets to sleep in it, right? But the other option is somebody can fill that bed when I'm not here. I'm paying less a month, but I know that bed's going to get swapped out, and I'll just be in another bed, whatever bed is open, when I come back in on Sunday. It might not be the same bed. Yes. Now, flight attendants, they travel more often than not, like with their own sheets even. So they're very used to this. So they don't necessarily mind a full bed or, either way, don't remember which one is which off the top of my head. But either way, these are all things that are totally normal for them. Unfortunately, with crash pads, more often than not, you're going to find, them stacked 3 high in every single corner, every square inch of the wall is filled, and there are investors that just want to maximize the income potential for that property, and they fill a bed in every corner, and it's not an all-around great experience. There's been news, articles and segments, filmed on it. It's like, hey, this is actually not great. And if you go to YouTube, you find more of that than you do of the better experiences for flight attendants. And unfortunately, they just accept it as like, this is how it is because that's how it's been for decades. So that's a great opportunity if you are near an airport, because you can provide a better experience. And if you're doing that, you're going to stay full. However, this particular property in Eastvale, super close to Ontario International Airport. You think it's an international airport, surely they have people coming in and out. Well, I have friends that are in the airline industry that I've known for years, so I reached out to them and I said, hey, do you know of anybody that comes through here? And unfortunately, none of the airlines have a hub in Ontario. The closest hub is in John Wayne in Santa Ana. So that kind of nixed the crash pad option for us. So then we shifted into travel nurses. So you can Google travel nurse jobs. You're going to see them posted by specific agencies. You can then call the agency and make a connection and tell them, I have housing available in your area. But just for the purpose of market analysis, I just want to know how many people are traveling to this area. And in fact, in this area, there are several hospitals that were hiring travel nurses when I was doing my market research. So that was kind of more or less what we looked at. So then again, running the numbers to see what does the pricing look like and where's our opportunity for design. If we bump up just a little higher than our competitor, can we rent for a little bit higher? Does it fall within what they're paying them? That's kind of all what you want to think about when you're looking at that. And then that specifically speaks to design because, like I said, you want to be a little bit better than your competitor, but you don't want to over-design. I don't need to put $100,000 into a property if it's not going to actually turn into more money for me or more income potential. For this particular property, if we had every bedroom full all year long, it was an income earner for the owner. If we didn't, it really wasn't. So even as a buy the room, it didn't make sense. So naturally, the option that's going to sell us the most is buy the bed. So back to buy the bed I went, and the other options for buy the bed are assisted living, sober living, transitional living, essentially anybody that's looking for longer term periods, and they're used to having to maybe share a bedroom or with 2 or potentially 3 people. Could be more, depending on how large the bedrooms are. And in this one, this bedroom is fairly large. So it just so happened to be that at that same time, I came across another couple here at the club that was looking to invest in sober living. So we started researching sober living for that particular area. There is a demand for it. There are a couple of companies that work in Riverside County that are constantly having to turn away people because they're always full. They have less turnover. So this right here kind of keyed us into that. That's our guest avatar. So the next thing we do is we kind of deep dive on the guest avatar. So this is all, this kind of all gets played into the property audit and, that I do. So this is kind of the deep dive that I do every time somebody hires me for a property audit. And especially if we're going with full service design, I need to know who I'm designing for so that I can make sure that I, like I said, alleviate a lot of those pain points before they even get going so we don't have as many issues down the line. So this is just kind of a list of some of the guest avatars for midterm rentals, not all of them. The list is way too long. And I feel like I find out about a new potential avatar every day, every week. It depends, there's tons. So we talked about travel medical professionals. The other one that not a lot of people talk about is healthcare patients. Sorry, I keep moving my mic. Healthcare patients. One of my very, very first guests at my house, and I call them guests instead of tenants because I just feel like I'm creating more of an experience for them. So I prefer to refer to them as that. So my guests at the very first guest I had at my condo in Garden Grove was in fact a patient, a cancer patient, who was undergoing treatment at a nearby facility. And she was traveling from Malibu to Irvine on Monday, staying in a hotel all week long, and then going back to Malibu on the weekends. So she preferred to not have to go drive all the way back to Malibu every weekend. So she was looking for someplace that could accept her dog, so pet friendly is super important to these patients. And just in general for midterm rentals, if you could be pet friendly, I highly suggest it because most people when they're traveling, they're home away from home, they're going to bring their families. And in many instances, that's going to be their dogs. Or cats, more often dogs. So healthcare patients, that kind of keyed me in. I also had several requests for housing from patients that were undergoing treatment at the same facility. You can actually contact the facilities themselves and talk to them and say, we have housing available and we have specifically set up our property for your patients. So we have, included things like a juicer, so they can, create their fresh juices and smoothies, things that are important to them. We have created air purifiers in every room because it makes it really hard for them to breathe, especially if they have anything to do with their lungs. They need that. I would not recommend a property with stairs, although mine does have stairs, but it does filter out those patients by like 80%. 80% of them can't even consider it because it has stairs. It's just a little bit too difficult for them. However, we did create a seating area right at the top of the landing so that once they get to the top, if they need a rest, they can do that. And again, that's just using design specifically for your avatar. That's a pain point that I realized pretty quickly she was experiencing. I think she was there for like 3 days. And I asked her, how are you doing with the stairs? And she said, well, it keeps me young and it keeps me active, but it can be tiring sometimes. So right away I got on Instacart. I got a little patio chair from Target, had it shipped, a cute little pillow, a little plant. I went over, I set it up really quick for her, and probably within like 2 hours she had a little seating area and we alleviated the pain point. Recovery patients, sober living, like I said. Transitional living, so this is people that are coming out of like prison and they need something to transition back into, I don't think it's jail, I think it would just be prison, but essentially it's just something that's going to help them transition back into the real world. So that is one strategy as well. International travelers, in July I have guests coming and they've never been to California before. So this is actually one of my favorites to set up for them because I have an opportunity to make their first time into California, super fun, and they're meeting their son and they're staying in our condo. And like I said, it's in Garden Grove, so there's a lot of things for them to do around the area. But I always tell people, hey, there's a farmer's market on Sundays at 4 p.m. and on Friday nights there's a car show in downtown every Friday night. You gotta make sure you check that out, and just those little things that goes above and beyond. That hospitality side is more what you might find with short-term rentals. I think if you can provide that in a mid-term rental, it kind of sets the bar a little bit higher. So those are things that I like to do as well. Extended vacationers, so somebody who wants to come out for an entire summer with their kids or maybe all of winter break because they have family nearby. Students, professors, I didn't put this up there, but military families very often will look for furnished housing. There's a new one that I have found out about recently. They're called geo-bachelors. Essentially, they're military personnel who have been geographically separated from their family, meaning they're from Idaho, but they're stationed in San Diego, and their whole family can't come with them. So he comes by himself, or she comes by herself, while her family stays behind. So they're looking for something small. You want to get behind the psyche a little bit, so they're still supporting their families back home. They still have mortgage and all of those payments, and now they have this additional expense. They do get a housing allowance, through the military, but they want to maximize and keep as much of that as they can. So knowing what that housing allowance is, if you have people that are there, I happen to have a friend who works in housing on 29 Palms Base, so if you know people, you can ask these questions. So what is it that they're getting paid typically? What is the average? And how much do you find that they're willing to pay when they're looking to you to get housing? How often do they stay on base versus how often are they looking off base? Does it matter if they're within so many miles of base? All of these things you can just add into your market research if you're in a particular area where they have that. Don't be afraid to call, essentially is what I'm saying. Students, professors, so professors do occasionally travel, especially if they're coming out for a semester and they're like a guest professor at a university. The university will put them up. So sometimes if you're near a university, you can talk to their housing department. You can also look at benefit students. You can see if they have sports teams. A lot of times those teammates would prefer to rent together in one house. So if you can talk to the housing department, they may say like, oh yeah, the volleyball team that's coming on, we have 4 new freshmen and they're going to be looking for a house. And you happen to have maybe 2-bedroom house and you have 2 beds in each room, you know that you have that done. And with students, you're putting their parents on the lease too. So if there is an issue, the parents are ultimately being held responsible as opposed to just a 19-year-old freshman or 18-year-old freshman. Flight attendants and pilots, like we talked about, crash pads. The more common one I feel like today, digital nomads, work from home professionals. These are people who, like I said, they work from home, so they're going to travel. They're more often going to look for ideal destinations. So they're looking for places that have a lot of like tourist attractions possibly, or it's a place that's very unique, like Joshua Tree is a unique place. You maybe don't want to live there all year round, but hey, if I get to live somewhere, I might look there for just a couple of months out of the year. And then from there, I'm going to go over to San Diego. And then from there, I'm going to go up to Malibu. You know what I mean? So think of those kinds of towns or destinations as places where that particular avatar would be more likely to look for housing. Insurance relocation claims. If you're in an area where none of these avatars work, insurance relocation claims. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter if the median income is low, or median income is high for the neighborhood, they're going to have tragedies, fires, floods, different types of things. And when that happens, where do they go while their house is being repaired? In most instances, their insurance company will offer them some type of housing allowance. The insurance company, your lease is through the resident that will be staying with you, but the insurance company is how they find you, and they're essentially paying it. So that's something to take note of. Furnished Finder actually can be a great way to find some of these contacts. So insurance and then just staffing, housing departments or staffing agencies. I found both of those contacts on Furnished Finder. They'll post a house, and it may not match your property particularly, but you can still keep them as a contact, and then let them know that you have housing in the area. And if they have a family that meets this criteria, or this is a property that you think would be fitting for them, let me know. And then relocating families, as we kind of talked about earlier. So when we talk about guest avatar analysis, I'm going to kind of pick things up because I know that I'm going to run too long. When we're talking about guest avatar analysis, we're looking at what kind of guests that we are going to receive booking inquiries from, and then who will actually be booking our property. Is there a difference there? What are their hobbies? What are their interests? How much money are they making? How much money do they have to put towards this property? So that determines what our prices can be. What are their demographics? Physically, are they men or are they women? Are they younger or are they older? Is their job title travel nurse? Or is their job title CEO of this company? Are they C-suite? That kind of thing. That's going to determine the expectation in terms of amenities that your property provides. What's their motivation to book? They're coming for vacation. They're coming because they have family in the area. The more that you can narrow it down, the better you can be and the more intentional you can be about the design, therefore attracting them to your property, and then once they're there, exceeding their expectations in terms of their experience. Creating, ultimately, more positive guest reviews. Design is going to evoke emotion. It doesn't matter if it's a great design or if it's a really bad design. It's going to evoke emotion. That's just what it does. If it's a bad design, it's going to evoke negative emotions. If it's a good design, it's going to evoke positive emotions, and those emotions are going to turn into memories. And those memories turn into reviews. So we want to create a good design that gives feel good, makes you feel good, and then it turns into a positive review. And good memories, so they can come back. What are frustrations that this particular type of avatar might have when they're booking? It's really hard for me to find something within my budget because maybe my budget is very low. Travel nurses, their budgets tend to be a little bit lower. They're more often likely to share a house. So think about it that way. Now I know I can rent by the room. I can bring the price down a little bit, but I'm still making enough money, still being profitable on the property, etc. What are the pain points during their stay? Like I mentioned, that guest who was a patient had a feeling she might have some hard time with the stairs. She fully well knew that there were stairs in the property when she booked it, but I also knew that about 80% of the cancer patients that requested to book with me, when I said there was stairs, they said, yeah, we can't do that. So that's why I wanted to check in with her after a couple of days of her being there. And sure enough, it was a little bit of a pain point, not a big issue, but she mentioned it, so I fixed it, and now nobody else will have that issue when they go. Ideal amenities, for her, I didn't have a juicer in the house, and that was a big thing for her. She actually travels with her juicer, so those things are heavy, and she was lugging them up the stairs. I'm like, if you don't have to bring your own juicer, that's probably going to be an exciting thing for her. The fact that she could bring her dog, that was exciting for her. So this is essentially kind of like a little bit of a worksheet that I put together that has, unfortunately that one's kind of hard to read, this one's a little bit easier, their name, their age, the location of where they actually live, where they're coming from, their occupation, their marital status, do they have kids, what's their annual income, all of these things, like I said, the more nitty-gritty you can get into, the better you're going to understand your potential guests and then design for them, etc. What are their hobbies, what are their interests, what are their aspirations, what's their motivation for booking, what's their frustration when booking, pain points during their stay, and amenities that we can put into the property that would alleviate those pain points. Specifically, the property that I talked about where I had one investor in the club and another investor in the club, and I was able to match them together, and now they're able to match their lease, and bada bing, bada boom, they've got a property. So who is going to stay in their property? And this is, we haven't moved this far into the project yet, but this is kind of an example of something that I could come up with. Let's say we narrow it down and we say it's going to be a female house. If it's sober living, you have all male or all female residents. You don't mix and match. So we want to have a female house. We know that we want it to be peaceful. We know that we want it to encourage a healthier lifestyle, a more holistic lifestyle. So I kind of tailored my guest avatar to those types of things that we already know we're going to put into the property. Because it's sober living, we are going to say this is a female, 20 to 35. They likely have younger children if they have children. They may be married. They're probably in the Inland Empire because they're going to want to stay close to their families, yes.
So you send this to them to fill out, or are these questions you ask?
Yes. Actually, tomorrow we'll be putting this worksheet up on my website as just like a free download. So if you follow me on Instagram.
Oh, I mean, you send it to the avatar.
No, this is just something that we do as far as our analysis of the property prior to creating the design.
Oh.
So with the investor. Okay. Yes, and so we came to kind of look into what are their hobbies. Actually, their hobbies maybe aren't the best thing for them at that moment. They kind of need to come in and find new hobbies in some cases. So what are some hobbies that will kind of gear them towards a healthier lifestyle? Maybe yoga, maybe gardening. Those are all really great things. Gardening is said to actually promote mental health, better mental health, I should say, just from being out in the sun, getting your hands dirty, keeping yourself preoccupied. It's a great, it's something that will hold you accountable. You can't leave your garden unattended. If they do, then everything dies. And so it's just a great option for them to kind of turn their emotions into. What are their interests? If they have young children, we can probably assume that they enjoy spending time with their young children. Specifically, our guest avatar who wants to stay by their family, whose motivation for moving through this rehabilitation process is because they want to be better for their families. So how do we help them be better for their families in this house? Spending quality time with family, movie nights, pizza nights, game nights. These are all some things that they may be interested in. Aspirations, again, they want to be healthier. They want to have that health and wellness, or I should say not both, but all, physically, emotionally, mentally. How does our place help them do that? Ultimate goal is to transition back into living with their family, feeling a sense of purpose and control within their lives. Motivation for booking means accountability and responsibility during the transition out of recovery back into their life, moving forward to a more holistic approach to living for themselves as well as their household. Frustration when booking. Unfortunately, the available sober living facilities are not the best. Very similar to crash pads, you get people shoving beds in every corner. It's not careful. The design isn't welcoming. It doesn't feel homey. Those are all common things that you can find in some of sober living facilities. So we want to provide the exact opposite. We want people that are going to enjoy themselves. Again, they have a better perspective on life, and then hopefully they want to stay with us. And we don't have as much turnover. That's, I guess, the ideal situation. Potential pain points during their stay. And potential triggers. Potential triggers to past trauma. So if you're looking at sober living, maybe don't put it, like I said, in a neighborhood where there is a liquor store on every corner, or they are going to come across paraphernalia regularly. Those are all going to be triggers. So that's something to consider. And then just amenities. Also pain points during stay, not having enough support, not having enough resources that lead them to living a healthier life. So those are all amenities that we can provide for them. So we can establish a community within the home that's uplifting and supportive by hosting weekly house dinners, monthly family events. We'll set up indoor and outdoor cooking spaces and dining spaces that encourage that feel. So even if it's family and it's not your outside family coming in, within the house we can encourage a sense of community and family so that they want to stay a little bit longer. Backyard garden, again, so they can get into some of that gardening. Then we can have a cool pizza oven in the backyard, and they can have pizza nights and some farm to table. That's really cool. I would want to live there. I want to live there. Yes, exactly. Well, that's kind of the beauty of creating your avatar. You can just pick whatever you want. As long as there's demand for it. We have to have that first part. We have to do the research still. You have yoga room to promote physical and mental well-being, maybe including some things that are not yoga related, but in fact more like exercise related, like bands, weights, that kind of thing, so that they have some of that exercise equipment as well. And that right there is a very common way, a very common hobby, I should say, for them to move into. Multiple gathering spaces to establish sense of community and discourage isolation. And then there's things that I didn't put on here that you have to know if you're going into sober living. Like for instance, you have to have one bathroom for every 6 residents. So you have shared bedrooms. You have to ensure that they have bathrooms. If your shared bedrooms add up the number of beds and it's over 6, you need another bathroom for them to share. So that you kind of have to get clever with the design there. Or you drop down the number of beds. So, and then the other thing that was new to me that I learned, you also have to have an appropriate number of refrigerators for the people. So it's one refrigerator, one large refrigerator to every 4 people. In this property that we're talking about, we are going to have 14 beds. So we need to have a lot of refrigerators. Where do you put all the refrigerators? Right? So you have to know these things before you just get the property and then you buy it and then you think, now I can't create this design that I wanted. Or let's just say you design the dining space or the kitchen space and you buy all of that furniture. And then you go, oh, I needed to put 5 refrigerators in the kitchen? How am I going to do that? You have to think these things through before you move into design. It's just one of the biggest mistakes that I see made. Not hiring an interior designer can be a big mistake. We just talked about this too. Not hiring an interior designer before the construction phase. People will do construction and then they don't hire the interior designer until you're ready to furnish. And then you have a construction crew on site already and the interior designer says we're going to put wallpaper on that wall or some kind of wall treatment on that wall. Now you have to pay a construction crew to come back. It would have been half the price if they would have done the install while they were already there. So having the design done before the construction begins can save you so much time and so much money. I'm talking months of time. And because especially for small jobs, if a contractor is going to come out to do a small job like that, they're going to charge you an arm and a leg, and you're on the bottom of the priority list. So you're probably going to wait 3 weeks for them to come and install that wallpaper. But you also can't install it while there's people living in it, so it's kind of a catch-22. So it's just better if you get the design done from the get-go. So we talked about the amenities. We know the backyard is super important for what we're doing, and this is how we're incorporating it. The backyard is not huge, but we're going to have, it's so dark unfortunately, a garden space on the left. We will have enough seating space to seat all of the people and enough dining space to seat all of the people. And then we have a little kitchen area with a pizza oven and a pizza on the counter. Just another view of that space. So you can see we talked about wanting to create a sense of calm and peace. We want it to feel organic because we want to have them implement these things into their life and ultimately leave the home better for themselves and for their families. So you can see that in the design. It's very calming. Nothing is bright and jarring. So that is going to be a difference that you're going to see in these particular types of homes. The garden, everything feels very organic. Dining space. And just kind of to, again, put visualization into it, we would have, you need a long dining table. If you have 14 people, you might need 2 dining tables. They might not make them long enough, or you might have to have it custom built. So those are all things to think about. If you're going to be furnishing property this large, you also want to know where you can save some money. So knowing certain brands that have better quality, but you can find them on sites like Wayfair, etc. Or if you have a designer when you're furnishing something this large, that can go directly to the wholesaler and buy them directly from them and get a better discount because they're buying in bulk. For instance, 14 beds, that's a lot of beds. Dining chairs, there's 2 dining rooms and then a third because of the outdoor dining space. That's a lot of chairs. Sheets, there's like 40 sets of sheets, probably more, that we're going to need because you need 3 sets of sheets per bed. At least two sets of sheets, but 3 is the most ideal. So just knowing all of that, if you can go with somebody that can purchase those things in bulk, if you are not able to do it, or consider looking into getting a seller's permit and do it yourself, if that's what you want, if that's the route that you want to go. But that's just knowing how to get around those things when you have so much to buy. It's going to be really important. And then just an example of bedroom. So again, I just want to stress the fact that 14 beds is a ton. So how do you make that space feel welcoming? How do you make it fair for 14 people? To an extent. You know, you certainly, if you have a room that is more private, you can actually charge a little bit more. So as far as market research, there are facilities in the area that charge between $750 to $900 for female homes by the bed. So we are hoping to go a little bit higher. Definitely think with the level of design that we're talking about, that you can see here. And this, I should say, some things are a little bit more expensive. Like those nightstands are not the cheapest nightstands, but they have big impact. You can't really tell on the wall because you don't get any of the texture, but they have big impact. Those curtains have big impact. It's not going to be as cheap if we were to go with just a solid linen curtain, but having a curtain that can come out down the middle of the room to provide privacy for their bed space, that's kind of a selling point. And then everything just being really the same, if you will. It doesn't mean that every bedroom is going to be this. We're not going to have 14 of these beds. Maybe we have 4 of these in this room, but in the other room we have 2 of a different kind of bed, and 2 of a different kind of bed. I think it's best to keep all of the linens the same, at the very least, because then you don't have to worry about which linen goes to which one, and they're just easier to replace. A little tip, my favorite is California Design Den. They're, I forget how to say it, but like essentially it's like OCO certified, so they're kind of more premier quality cotton sheets. They're cooling, they're really soft. You don't have to go with the super high thread count. 400 thread count honestly is what I have on my own bed, and they're very comfortable. And they're not cheap, they're not going to be $19 a bed. They're probably going to be somewhere between like $40 to $50 a bed. But you can also purchase them through Minoan, MinoanExperience.com. They specifically cater to short-term rental operators. And when you're purchasing this many, it's smart to go through them because they can negotiate the pricing of certain things. So California Design Den is on Minoan. I personally just buy them off Amazon. Just really good quality. A lot of STR designers use them in their properties. And that's it. That's it for today anyway. Does anybody have any questions?
There's a question. No questions. Oh, yes. 1 second.
When you
1 second.
design this,
1 second. Here. There you go.
when you design this for avatars that have health issues or mental issues, are you required to provide a live-in nurse as well?
It depends. So you do have to consider the level of care that you want to provide. So, and also what it is that you're kind of marketing it as. If you're providing any kind of treatment, there are lots of licenses and things of that nature that you'll have to go about getting. Especially if they cater to patients with mental health issues, I would say more often than not, they are going to require you to have a nurse on site. If any treatment is being administered in any way, shape, or form, you're going to have a nurse on site, I'm sure of it. There are definitely professionals specifically for those business models that I would consult. This particularly is just a furnished rental. No treatment is offered at the property, so no license is required.
So with your rentals, do you need do we also do a background check on the tenant or yes?
You can. I have not yet because all of my bookings have been through Airbnb so far. Airbnb has done pretty well for me, and I've been able to slowly increase as I've gotten some reviews and guests have stayed with me. I've been slowly able to increase a little bit. So the property was originally only marketed on Furnished Finder, my Garden Grove property, I should say. This is my Garden Grove property, actually. Only marketed on Furnished Finder initially, was furnished with kind of remnants of what the owner had left behind that he didn't care to take to his new property, and then just kind of filled in. But you could also, as I did the property audit and walked through the kitchen, there were like Yogurtland spoons and like people's leftover stuff from when they stayed. There was a jar of bacon grease under the kitchen cabinet. It's just a guest that left it there.
Isn't there always a jar of bacon grease by the stove?
Not in my house, but we put ours in foil. We put foil in the cup, But that's just because, we try to be healthier. And bacon grease, if my husband could cook with bacon grease, I promise you he would every single time. Also, if he could cook every steak with a pound of butter, he would.
Well, the bacon grease is healthier, but the butter is a little.
Yeah, I prefer just like a tad bit of olive oil and pop it in the air fryer. It's just easier. Sorry, to finish what I was saying, remind me of that.
It's background verification.
Thank you. So yes, I've had more luck on Airbnb. I can fluctuate the price, so I don't do background, but I do have them sign a lease. You can do background. Now, one option to consider is if you are able to find your bookings through staffing agencies or through like the housing with like certain travel nurse agencies or through hospitals directly, things of that nature, or if it's housing through student housing, you may not need to. It's personal preference is what I would say. I think if somebody randomly came to me and said, I want to rent your property for 6 months, I would background check them. If I don't know where they came from, there's, nothing else to fall back on. There's also I don't want to call it a software, but a company called Superhog, and they can help as far as, for like $7, I think, per application, they can verify the driver's license and ID, so at least you know that the people that are staying in the unit are the people that are signing the lease. So you can verify identification. Superhog is generally pretty affordable. Anybody else?
I had a question. So, when you're analyzing for like your avatar, like sober living, kind of those different niches, how do you kind of determine like the quality of that tenant for that specific kind of market?
So I will start by saying I have not ran a sober living facility. So when I have a client that comes to me for design and they're inquiring about a specific type of avatar, I just in general make it a point to learn as much as I can, just in general, regardless of whether I have people coming to me or not. I spend at least 2 hours every morning educating myself. So it's reading a book, listening to a podcast, watching YouTube videos, pretty much anything, reading articles, you name it. So if I have a client that comes to me with a specific idea in mind, and I don't know anything about it, that's what I'm going to focus my education on for the week or 2 weeks or whatever it is. And that's just kind of how I've been able to kind of expand my network too. From midterm rentals to, cancer patients, what do they need? Read articles about what they need, all of the things. And so sometimes things just pop into my head too. But specifically with sober living, I found a couple of resources that I found very helpful as far as gaining insight into the actual ways that they run sober living facilities and then how the types of people that are staying with them. So essentially the guest avatar. So I found a podcast particularly recently, and the woman is in Riverside County, and she has 3 sober living facilities. So she talked a little bit about how she did her background checks or not background checks, because she does not fully run a background check, but she does ask them certain questions. Like for instance, she'll ask them if they've been convicted of certain felonies. Like if there was anything like a sexual assault, or because they won't take anybody that has been convicted of that, or if there's any kind of violence on their record, they won't take them. If they have any issues with mental health, where that's primarily their issue, she doesn't feel she's the right facility for them, so they won't take them. They would refer them to another resource. So you can be particular. So you can pick and choose who you want to stay with. But I think that if you're going to go into that strategy, you have to do it with passion for it and compassion for the people that are going to be staying with you. So doing right by them, not just saying like, well, I don't like the way that they talk, or whatever the case may be, and then sending them on their way. Truly, if you can't fit their needs, then at least have some place that you can refer them out to. I would say that's kind of how I would run it. But everybody's going to run their business differently. I design it for them, and then they run it themselves. Yes.
2 questions. One of them is, 2 questions. One of them
Do that
is revenue, annual income, money, dollar-wise. What's your profit? What's your return on your investment? annually?
For
Or the
just,
short-term rentals for the one that you've got here in Garden Grove?
so we've been running for like 3 months, 4 months? 3 months, excuse me. On this particular property, we've had 2 guests in the 3 months that we've been running. We had our first guest who was with us for 31 days, and then our second guest extended her stay. So she was originally a 30-day booking, and she extended it to a 65-day booking. And then the next guest will be coming in July. So far we're running just under 5,000 is our average, and our goal is to get up to about 5,500. But it's hard to just come out of the gate at that high number because you don't have anything to back you up. You have no reviews or anything like that. So I think I had mentioned that initially he was renting at like $3,200 a month on Furnish Finder. We put in about, with construction fees and design fees, he probably put in about $20,000 into the property. We were able to save some things. More of the larger ticket items we saved, but he had to replace all of the smaller things, and then we just added a little bit of character to the property in terms of the design. And that's where we're looking to turn out at 5,500. So as far as annual revenue, I can't exactly tell you because we haven't been open yet for the year. But we started, our first booking was 4,500. The last one was 4,700 a month for 2 months, and the next one is actually a $5,200 booking for 47 days or 46 days.
Is this covering your costs, like your mortgage and everything?
Yes, it absolutely covers his costs. So his minimum that he needed was, if I'm not mistaken, it was about like 2,500. That was like his minimum of what he needed. So it just depends on the individual property owner. But that's where I will say if I'm working a property audit with someone and we're just trying to determine price point and things like that, and I'm working to advise them down that line, it is important for me to know exactly how much they need to be making so that I can let them know if the property will actually make that much money. For instance, if you're looking at buying a property and you know you're going to be paying, let's just say you're taking over a sub 2 and your PITI is $1,800 a month, but then we know there are other expenses like utilities and the internet and the landscaping, et cetera, we add all of that up and we say, okay, our operating expenses are going to look like this, and we want to make X amount of money. And different people care about different things. They want to see it grow over time. Maybe they want cash on cash. It just depends. So different investors have different priorities.
Second question is in regards to, I hear that cities are regulating some Airbnbs because of competition with hotels. Is there any regulations against midterm rentals from the cities?
As of right now, there is not. Now, there could be restrictions in terms of if you're running a business out of this, such as a sober living home or an assisted living home or something of the sort, there could be regulations against that in your city. So that's something that you'll want to actually call city planning to find out. That was something that we did for the Eastville property. We had to call and confirm that that would be allowed. Oddly enough, it didn't fall in the city of Eastville. On the planning map, it now fell under Riverside County, which is why we're able to do it at this particular property. So you don't know unless you make those calls. Anybody else? Yes.
Actually, that was my question about regulation. So anything over 30 days really is not regulated as a short-term rental.
Nope. Correct. Go ahead.
Oh, well, and the other thing was, how do you calculate deposits? And what part of that is refundable?
Typically, yes. Typically, the deposit would be refundable in full. I mean, you can control the lease to your liking, so you can put in there whatever you want to put in there. If you want to charge a full month's rent, you can. But in most instances, you're renting it for, almost double what you would be renting it for unfurnished. So it's kind of senseless to charge $5,000 a month for a deposit, especially if they're only going to stay for 60 days. So my Airbnb, for me and the investor that I work with, we've agreed that if they're coming from Airbnb, because they pay ahead in full, and Airbnb requires, if you're booking on Airbnb and you're doing a month-to-month rental, such as this, Airbnb requires them to put auto pay. So they don't have to pay. If they're paying, if it's $5,000 a month and they're staying for 3 months, that's a $15,000 stay. They do not have to pay the $15,000 up front. They're going to pay $5,000. You'll get your payout.
at the end of the month, when 30 days comes around, it will auto or direct deposit out of their account, and you'll get your next payout of $5,000, and at the end, your next payout of $5,000. I will also say if there's any cleaning fees or any other fees that are associated, like a pet fee, those will come on the front end of the transaction, and then you'll just get your monthlies for the last couple. Of course, if you have any issues, you can always request money through, Airbnb's thing where you can go through their insurance, or I always recommend having your own insurance as well, just in case you need that.
Tony's next, and I'll come over to you right with the mic.
Regarding your midterm rental, where did you get your lease from? How detailed is it?
It's not super detailed. I just kind of Googled different types of leases, and then I also, he had a lease, so because he was previously listing with a property manager, his previous property manager had a lease, so he had that. I used that, and I Googled what other medium-term leases looked like, and I asked a couple of other medium-term rental investors what their leases looked like, and kind of just tailored it to what it is that we're wanting to do. So, like for instance, our deposit is like $1,500. It's not. We're trying to charge $5,000. In some instances, if I get, let's say, 2 weeks away from a booking, a vacancy, and I don't have that filled, that only happened the very, very first booking. It didn't fill right away. So what I did was I kind of did my own price, difference, and I just go in and I manually changed it every 1 to 2 days, up a little bit, down a little bit, and I can put it because it's a minimum 30-day stay. I can say this is what I want to make for the month. So I'll say I want $5,000. Now I want $49,000, $4,900, $5,100. You can adjust that, and then you can add a discount to it. So that's what I have found as far as the pricing strategy that tends to work the best for me, because it's only one property, and I didn't want to pay for that software that adjusts it.
And then how are you collecting the payment?
Right now it's Airbnb, so Airbnb does that for me. Yes. But I will say that if you're going to go direct booking, there are a few websites out there, a few companies out there that can handle direct booking websites that can help you host them, and they will handle all of that for you. Or you go with something like PMS software, and then they'll pay through PMS. So most PMS software, Hospitable included, can actually run your direct booking website as well. They'll create a direct booking website for you on Hospitable. So then you can run off of your direct booking, Airbnb, VRBO, however many, and then it funnels them all into one calendar.
Okay. Just a tip, I'd really have a lawyer look at your lease, so you avoid a lawsuit. I know somebody really close to me that was involved in a 2-year lawsuit because of the lease.
Yes.
Which they took going a very large place, which should have known better.
Yes, absolutely. You should always have a lawyer look at your lease.
Yeah, unfortunately. I was just curious, what's the cut for Airbnb, or what's the commission?
So Airbnb is, I want to say it's like 13 and change is what they charge, but you can have that split to where you're paying like 3%. I'd have to pull it up and tell you the exact number. Because remember, I don't have a new guest staying with me every couple of days. I have one guest come in and I look at my payout, and then I don't need to look at it again until the end of the month, essentially. I mean, I'm constantly going in there and looking and checking in with my guests and everything, but at the end of the day, I'm only looking at that payout a couple of times within the month. When it comes in, I confirm it. When I send it to my, when I'm notifying the owner that the payout's going to be, coming into his account, et cetera, that's what I'm looking at. So anyway, 3% will be yours, and then the rest you put on the guest. So they're paying like 10%. And I haven't had any issue with that. I think we have one.
How do taxes compare between the STRs and MTRs? I know for STRs, there's like transient tax and other potential taxes. How does that look for MTRs?
So because I only co-host, I really can't speak to any experience on that, as the owner would be the one that's working with the taxes. He just pays me a percentage to manage it. But I would always consult a tax professional, because they're going to be the ones that are going to tell you as far as which strategy you go with, different options for you.
What is your range of budget to furnish a typical 3-bedroom house?
The biggest thing I would say is it does depend on where you're located. 3 bedrooms, I would say on the lower end, 30,000. And then, of course, it can go up from there, but on the higher end, I would say somewhere around 60, just depending on the quality that you want to put in, and really what it is that you're looking to achieve with the home. For instance, if we're trying to attract families, we're not going to put super expensive stuff in the property. I'm not going to put really expensive wallpaper, although in person, it would create a much better experience that would really justify a higher nightly rate or monthly rate. If at the end of the day, greasy fingerprints and crayons are probably going to end up all over the walls, we're just not going to put that much money into the property. Instead, I would choose a vinyl-based wallpaper, which is going to be a little bit less expensive. And you can still get a similar look for a little bit less. So again, it just depends on who you're marketing to and the location of the property. Oh, yes.
Kind of stuff along the same lines. I'm trying to furnish mine. What are kind of like the top 5 or top 3 kind of items when you're furnishing a property that will provide kind of the biggest return on satisfaction for reviews and stuff?
Mattress is number 1, and bed frame. Those really should go hand in hand, because ultimately, if somebody ends up breaking your bed, they're going to feel really bad, and it's not going to create a really great experience. But the mattress is absolutely number 1. Regardless of who's sleeping there, they're going to want to be comfortable. The second is the sofa. Again, we don't want, especially if you only have one living room, or if it's the primary living room, investing a little bit more in that seating area, that's probably going to be the second place that they spend the most time in. And then in my opinion, it kind of needs to be split between the design, because that's what I do, so naturally that's going to be like, hey, you should probably put some money there. But I have seen it return, you know what I mean? It's worth it to invest in the design. You can ask anybody who has scaled large what their like secret sauce is, and they're going to let you know that they work with designers. And the second kind of split that I would say there is the kitchen here. Having a well-stocked kitchen or a fully stocked kitchen, even in a short-term rental, really will set you apart. Not all short-term rentals will have fully stocked kitchens, and I can promise you you're not going to get longer stays if you don't have decent stuff in the kitchen. I've heard podcasts and I've heard people say that they didn't even have a knife, not one single knife in the kitchen. Things go missing, it just happens. At my house, my spoons go missing. My kids are so good about throwing their trash in the trash can, but inevitably that Jello cup is going into the trash can with a spoon. And so things go missing. And the same thing happens in a rental. I would say it probably happens more often in a rental because people aren't really, being as maybe particular about keeping up with that kind of stuff. So just auditing it also to make sure that if you're going to pay to fully stock the kitchen, you keep it fully stocked. And if you're going to tell them in your listing that you're fully stocked, again, just audit it, put it on the checklist for your cleaner, your property manager to audit after every checkout. So a well-stocked kitchen will take you pretty far too. Yes?
So you figured out that if you buy one of those pretty fancy bed frames with the stupid little slats, the trick is to put the good old school metal bed frame inside the fancy pretty bed frame?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. There's actually one on Amazon it's a metal bed frame, and I promise you it's not easy to put together. There are a lot of screws. Also a little key, if you're putting together a ton of furniture, and that's just what happens when you put these properties together, there's a lot. Like hours and hours and hours to put together furniture. I would prefer to hire somebody to do it, I'm just saying. But if you're going to put together a ton of furniture, Loctite is your best friend. I don't know why more people don't do this, but just a little drip of Loctite on every single bolt, and then put your furniture together, so that it kind of pulls together. I always have a bag of that, or excuse me, a little squeeze bottle of that in my staging bag.
And Gorilla Glue when you're putting stools together.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, I haven't used Gorilla Glue, but that's a good idea. Gorilla Glue, if you're going to put a wood stool together. Yeah, anywhere there's a joint, anything you can do to strengthen that joint is key. I've had professionals that, that's what they do. They put together furniture all the time. Like my receiving and delivery drivers that I use, they put together furniture all the time. When I ask them to use Loctite, they say, what? Nobody does that. You're pretty thorough. Well, yeah, somebody's going to sit on this thing, and if they lean back like you're doing right now, imagine, and they just pop the whole chair in half and then what happens if you have 8 dining chairs, you go to replace one of them, and it's discontinued, and they're not in stock, and then you have to replace all 8 dining chairs. It's just, if I can avoid it, I'm happier to avoid things.
So we got 2 more over here. We got Lillian and Rich, and then that will be our final.
Hi, Lily.
Hi. So I just got back from Albuquerque, where I spent 2 months in a midterm rental, and it belongs to a best friend of mine, and so I was more like a guest, you know. But she was having difficulty with marketing it, and so based on your presentation today, it sounds like she hadn't figured out really her avatar, and then how to market to the avatar. So when you say you're advertising or marketing, you're writing a specific paragraph on Airbnb that's attracting that specific avatar, right?
Absolutely. So you'll want to look up, and you can use AI for this, right? You can use ChatGPT to find out what are higher ranked search words for particular people. So what are higher ranked search words for travel nurses? What are they looking for when they're looking for housing? And that can help you, as far as using those keywords in your listing and just optimizing it in that way. The other thing is just show up where your avatar shows up. So we have decided that this is who we're going with, this sober livingcation. We're specifically furnishing this for women that are ages 20 to 35. We can go into facilities that are treatment facilities that are in our area, meet the people that are there, the staff I should say, and let them know, hey, we're opening up, a mile away, a mile and a half away, and we are furnishing this specifically for young moms who are finding themselves in this, and we want to encourage them by doing X, Y, and Z, and this is how we're doing that in our home, and just going where they are. If you're going to set up a property for a travel nurse, find the place where travel nurses show up. First of all, Furnish Finder, and they all know about it. The actual staffing agencies who are hiring them, possibly the hospitals, they may have networking events at the hospital for the staff that's there, so you can get in there and you start talking to a nurse. And, their word of mouth, they're going to share and they're going to say, oh yeah, I really love this place that, maybe they find you, or I heard about this place, I saw it online, hey, it looks really cool. And then they're going to share that with the other travel nurses that are coming through. They could even be in Idaho at a hospital and they say, oh my gosh, there's this really cool place in California. Oh, you're going to Chalk? I stayed there. It was like a mile and a half from Chalk. It was really close to a hospital. It's just word of mouth, right? So show up when they show up. The other one is Facebook groups. More often than not, there's a Facebook group for pretty much anyone out there. So if you can get in there, and then you can let them know that your house is available as well. That's a good way to market them as well. Rich.
Yeah, what's it's like one thing that you're like sick of seeing, or like you're like, please don't do this, and then one thing that like everybody needs, no matter what.
Good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. There's so many. One thing that I'm absolutely sick of seeing, it's going to be artwork, but I would say it's a toss-up between like the signs that have a lot of words on them. Not to say that I don't have a sign that has words in my house. I do have a couple of them because they're meaningful to me. But in a rental property, you're not furnishing for yourself, you're furnishing for the masses. Or at least you're furnishing for your avatar. So what's sentimental to you is not necessarily going to be sentimental to them. So when you're going to establish it as business, you want to make sure you do it that way. So the artwork is important for me. The other thing specifically about artwork that drives me a little bit nuts is if you have a beach house and there's fish and starfish on the walls of every room. It's just, I would prefer to see more textures that you find near the beach, colors that you find near the beach that bring the outside inside. So for me, my philosophy on interior design is just to bring nature in. And nature is, like I said earlier, it promotes better mental health. It's just, for me, it's a more of a calming environment. So if I can pull that inside, that's kind of what I prefer to do. So artwork. And then what does somebody need? Artwork. If you look online and you go through your list of all the different, houses that are available, there's a big difference in the houses that don't have art on the walls and the houses that do. And I have seen some very nice looking homes. The house is gorgeous. It clearly was designed with intention. There's really nice showers, great countertops and backsplash in the kitchen. It definitely looks like it was all redone, and even the furniture is decent, but then everything is white. The sheets are white, the couches are white, the walls are white, and there's no light in the home. So Art, I can bring that to you. Anybody else?
All right, well, we're gonna shoot. Are you gonna be here
I'll be
for a
here.
while? Okay, so if you guys do have more questions, you guys have like a little mini round table, just plug up some chairs and sit around her, and she'll get those. But so thank you, everyone. Give it to you guys. Just a quick few announcements that I spaced out and just did not bring up. So next Wednesday, so a lot of you know this already, but we do have an event on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Mondays. It's the FIREfocus groups.
Wednesday.
I'm sorry?
Wednesdays,
What did I say?
Monday.
Yeah, I said Monday. I'm telling, this is why I'm spacing out. Thank you for the correction. I'm on 4 hours of sleep. I'm sorry, you guys. But yes, on Wednesdays, that is today, Wednesday. Also, so next week, Jim and Evan will be talking about negotiating with sellers and along with like current market trends, is what I believe I was told. So that's going to be a really good one. I was talking to Tracy about this. Sometimes it's just really nerve-wracking to talk to a seller and like, oh, how do I, what if they say this? So they'll probably have all kinds of good tips. Also, the 4th Wednesday, which is the 20th this month, we will have cash flow game night here in this room. So we do only have that once quarterly. Yes, ma'am. Are we doing a kids table? He's thinking about it. We'll get back to you. So those are the two. And then also members that do not have your lanyard yet, please check in with Bree or Caitlin in the back, and we will either get it to you later tonight or the next time you're here. But or is it tonight? We're doing it tonight? Tonight. So just hang out and we'll get you those new lanyards. So some of you have the old style badge, which is totally fine, but we are switching over to this one. I mean, some of you like your classic badge and you show that you're an OG member, but we are switching over to the lanyards. So thank you all so much. Andy, did I miss something again?
You didn't tell him to be back here at noon.
Oh, yes. So Bree did mention exchangers, which the conversation she was referring to, the deals are right in front of you. I mean, I see a lot of people, they're trying to unload properties or whatever's going on. And it's right there in exchangers, and that's what we actually went out to, was another investor from the club. I went and looked at his property in 29 Palms. So, we actually have two, but one was not a club member, but anyway, I did meet him through Andy in a way. But yeah, so tomorrow it's a hybrid meeting. We are here in the clubhouse from 12 to 2, but you can also jump in on Zoom. So, I'm waiting for Andy to correct me on something. I got a thumbs up from Rich, so I must be good. Thank you all for coming. Have a great night.